My name is Gabby, and I write and record and perform my original music under the name RVBY My Dear. I'm originally from Australia, and I've been based in LA since 2020. Before that, I lived in New York City for 9 years. I just put out an EP a couple of months ago in November 2022, and it's self-titled. It's the RVBY My Dear EP. This year in 2023, I'm really excited to be getting out there and playing more shows. Last week, I just played my EP release show in LA. In a lot of ways, I think LA and Australia are very similar. Part of the appeal of coming here was because it's so similar climate wise. And also, I just think culturally, like there are differences, like generally between America and Australia, and there's some pretty big, obvious ones. There is like a laid backness that Australia and LA specifically both share. So after spending 9 years in New York, this felt like coming home in a lot of ways. I'm not super tapped into the Australian market anymore just because I've lived in America for so long. It'll be 12 years in August, and I unfortunately don't get to go back very often. But I will say, like, even growing up there, people just work very hard, and we're aware that we get forgotten about a lot. So we tend to put in that extra effort. I think the level of creativity and musicianship back home is on par with anywhere else in the world. It's just we're so isolated and we're so, oh yeah, that island over there. Yeah, Australia, how cute. Oh, it's like little koalas. Like we don't really, I think, get taken seriously much. But I mean, some of the best bands in the world are from Australia, and even going back decades ago. And then you've got like pop artists like Kylie Minogue, like she's a freaking icon. Sia is Australian. She's like the biggest songwriter in the universe. Up until recently, it's been a lot more difficult to break out from the Aussie market and try and get your footing in the US. But I would say probably the biggest change has been like stuff like, TikTok and social media that's allowed people really from anywhere in the world to kind of make their mark in other places and like globally. And I would say that probably the industry back home has kind of caught on to that a lot more. Yes, it is definitely a pandemic baby. A couple of the songs were written before the pandemic started. When the pandemic started, that was when I moved to LA, and my producer who I worked with on my debut album, when I moved, he was like, "Well, all my stuff is canceled, all your stuff is canceled, so do you want to just start working on this now?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, let's do it." It was the first time that we had ever worked with it being just the two of us. Like with my album, I had a band with me, so it was more of like a band record. This EP was it was really cool because it was just the two of us like collaborating. A lot of it was done remotely. We recorded in May and July of 2020. Then after that, yeah, I would just sort of was thinking about how I wanted to release it. I really wanted to do music videos, and it took me a while to kind of like get settled in a new city and coming out of the pandemic and be able to do more things. And then finally last year I was like, okay, I can at least put out one song by myself, which was Black Moon. And then from there, that is actually how Spirit House Records found me, was through Black Moon. And then they helped me put out the whole thing. I'm really happy that I did do the Black Moon release by myself because I think it taught me a lot of things and it gave me a lot of reasonable expectations to have going forward, both in terms of feeling like people should do more, but then also like not being, outlandish with the things I was expecting from people on my team. And like it really like kind of reoriented my brain in terms of like what to expect with like who would potentially cover the release. And there were a lot of really amazing surprises that came from this EP, like the Bandcamp feature. I got played, speaking of Australia, Lose My Mind got played on Triple J back home, which is a big radio station there, which was a total, like, I don't even know how or why that happened. So, but yeah, it like every release day up until this one, it's always been like, oh my, like I just get so down and so like, oh, it's over. I'm so sad. Boo hoo. But with this one, I felt really good. I was like, oh, yeah, this is like something to celebrate. I think because I had that team and I had that support system, it didn't feel like it was all weighing on my shoulders. Like I could share the load with them, and they were so helpful and so supportive and really like, just there for me every step of the way. Like they were very receptive to my ideas. Anytime I would suggest something, they'd be like, sure. They always were full of suggestions. So I'm overall like really, really happy with how the rollout turned out, and I couldn't have really asked for a better label home. I'm pretty clear about my sound at this point, and it is like I will happily talk about my influences and shout them from the rooftops any day of the week. I don't think what I'm doing is, original. It's like rooted in so much of the music that I grew up listening to. So I oftentimes like will refer back to that sometimes. I keep like playlists and lists of like songs that I hear that I'm like, ooh, like that really connects with me. I want to like steal those chords or like listen to that more and like figure out what they're doing. I kind of like study music a lot in that way, at least for my own taste and like what I want to put into this project. There's definitely like a sound that I'm drawn to. So whenever I hear something that like kind of fits within that world, I'm like, oh yes, tell me more. I want to like add that to like the bank of inspiration. There were a couple of years actually where I really didn't listen to much music at all. I was listening to a lot of podcasts and just wasn't really. And then I would be like, why am I so like blah? Why am I so uninspired? And then I remember being on tour actually in 2019 and on a bus and just being like, I'm just gonna like listen to this song, and like I put on my like music playlist. I think I had my iPod with me, like my old iPod, and I pulled up something from that and was like, "Oh, yeah, there it is. Oh, okay, the wheels are spinning now. Oh, yes, 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 yes." And actually, I think the first song I listened to was Plug In Baby by Muse, which ended up being like the little jumping off point for Black Moon, the piano part from that. All that is to say that I find listening to music helps me in my creative process. It helps inspire me and energize me. And like going to shows really, like last year, really motivated me to be like, oh, I want to get back out there and play shows. I watch a lot of movies. So that's kind of a hobby of mine, and a hobby that went away in the pandemic and has now come back is just like going to the movies by myself and like plunking myself down and like just being immersed. Like I find filmmaking just so inspirational to me, like film scores and just like that visual side is an act, like acting and like the emotion and the drama and everything. It's just like, oof, I love it. Yeah, so we have a Green Day poster here. I was a huge Green Day fan in high school. I actually got to play on stage with them when I was 16. I'd love to like meet them one day and be like, "Do you remember me? I was the bass player from the Melbourne show in 2005." I made like this sign on a pillowcase so it wouldn't rip, and then I met like two dudes in line and was like, okay, when they start looking for people to go up and play, like, can I go on one of your shoulders? And they were like, yeah, sure. So like I'll never forget like being hoisted up and holding my sign and screaming. And Billy Joe was like, okay, now we need a bass player. And he like looks around and it was like in slow motion, him looking and pointing at me. And I was like, yes, me. And then I had to like crowd surfed my way to the front and I played the song, and then he made me stage dive afterwards, which was absolutely horrifying. And there is video evidence on YouTube. So if anyone's listening and they want to Google Green Day at the Telstra Dome, December 17th, 2005, you will find 16-year-old me playing bass. I remember someone saying to me afterwards, they were like, I'm so happy a girl got up there. I'm so happy they picked a girl. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. There's some art by an artist named Bill Crisafi up there. I think he's from Salem, Massachusetts, and he has kind of like G art. And then to the left of my head, there's some. Oh my gosh, I'm completely blanking on his name, but he's a Japanese artist that draws pictures of angry little girls. So, and then there's a Kiki's Delivery Service poster. I love that movie. And then above that is a Springfield Jazz Festival poster because I love The Simpsons. David Bowie, because that would be insane. Portishead, bringing Portishead back together would be sick. There's this band from, I think they're from New York, but they were originally from LA, called Mama. So I would have them because that would be so fun to see them live and just like rock out. Oh man, it's so hard keeping it to just three. There might be some remixes coming later in the year, maybe. But the thing that's coming up soon is I'm actually playing at a songwriter showcase in LA on February 5th at Gold Diggers. My buddy Marilisa, who I went to college with in New York and who now also lives in LA, she's curated this like amazing lineup of LA based singer songwriters. And the idea is that we're going to be like talking about the process behind writing the song. So it's going to be a lot more like interactive than just people getting up and playing. So sort of like storytelling and playing music. So I'm super excited to do that. That's on February 5th at Gold Diggers.